Kate Mila. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. It's time for our Saturday book. And before I show you the book, I just want to say that it's summer. Ostensibly, you don't live where I live. Summer vacation for everybody. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to do something a little escapist, a beach novel, that kind of thing. I don't do fiction, but I realized I actually had a book that the author sent me, and why shouldn't I use it? It's really entertaining. So the next couple of weeks, we're going to do something a little lighter than I usually do, and you will be familiar with the author, and I'm pretty sure she's going to come back and have a little chat with us at the end. So our book this week is Going Hollywood by Sara Jordan-Heinz, who wrote the Dorothy KILGALLEN book that we did a while back. Sara is from the Midwest, and at one point decided there are all these famous old stars that were from the Midwest, and what's the connecting thread? What was going on there? What were their lives like? And it's really entertaining. Don't think this is Entertainment Tonight from television. So it's well written, very gripping, very compelling, and I guarantee there are things in here you have never heard before. I was just astounded. So this will be lighter fare for the next couple of weeks, but given the state of the world, I think this might do us all good. It might be a little cathartic, right? And then I have a very serious book after that. So let's get started and just see. I think we'll probably, I'm not sure how long each star will take, but maybe we'll get to 2 or 3 stars today. So this is called Going Hollywood, Midwesterners in Movieland by Sara Jordan-Heinz, written in 2019. And Sara is herself a Midwesterner from Iowa, and she has always been fascinated with the movie world. Her father, who is Larry Jordan, who wrote the Maryland book, told me today that she has been absolutely obsessed with old Hollywood since she was a kid. I relate to that. I really relate to that. She has herself says she was drawn to older Hollywood, captivated by the black and white films. I can't wait to talk to her about this. The clothing, the cars. This is when you could tell the difference between makes of cars, the decor, and the mores of our society's past. She said as she matured, she learned about the censorship that was in Hollywood, and it pressured morality, and it imposed values, and whose morality, whose values. She prefers the reality of today's movies. I don't know. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Yet she always returns to the images of the past. She was working on her family-owned regional magazine, Midwest Today, and she saw a profile. I can't read my writing, and we're on page 1. Profile of famous Midwesterners, and they're the ones who inspired this book. So she said the wholesome image of the heartland is in stark contrast to the glitz and excess of Hollywood. But is it? These profiles that she read, they tell the story behind the story. She really dug deep into this, and she's collated a lot of information. She says there's a stark contrast between the industrial heartland from the Midwest that these celebrities left. I mean, they were born and raised there, and usually they left as teenagers, and the manufactured world of Tinseltown, of Hollywood, it's a big illusion. So she asks what qualities from the Midwest led them to become stars, or was it the Midwest at all? Or, we're gonna talk about that. She believes it wasn't just talent that she speculates. Let's look at what she says. Surely it was not their innate talent alone. Sara, the author, I theorize it was an amalgam of factors such as the heartland's values, climate, geography, economy, and culture. The strong work ethic, religiosity, struggle to overcome obstacles, and the pervasive humility and empathy of Midwest natives, spoken like a Midwesterner, all provided these stars with experiences that shaped them as individuals and helped them be ready to shine when opportunity came knocking. They were each unique personalities, to be sure, but they all had traits to which moviegoers could relate. I think she probably has a point there. People saw a bit of themselves because the celebrity would play roles that reflected where they were coming from. You'll see that in a lot of old movies. Most came of age in a very difficult economy. Now, remember, we're talking the 20s and 30s, motivated to leave their homes because of the economy and the hardship. They were lured by California. You know, California had a mystique, and it was, you know, the land of sunshine, gigantic oranges, and, you know, palm trees, golden opportunities. California has a history of that, you know, the gold rush, the land of dreams. In the foreword, Sara compares the different Midwest routes to the difficult Midwest routes to the incredible successes of some of these Hollywood's greatest stars. So they're profiled here. And so we begin with the king of Hollywood, Clark Gable. He was what she calls an enduring enigma. Never really knew the real Clark Gable. Of course, he was the iconic Rhett Butler from Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind, problematic as the subject matter definitely is. Gone with the Wind is one of those movies. I discovered the book when I was about 11. I had my best friend. Her father had gone to college in the South, and as a result, absorbed a lot of the culture. He wasn't a racist. He was into music and stuff. And he published books. He had a small publishing company. And they published books like The Ghosts of the Plantation Houses, The Ghosts of South Carolina, The Ghosts of Gettysburg, that kind of thing. And she and I were absolutely obsessed with these things. Of course, she discovered historical novels having to do with that time period, kind of in conjunction with the ghosts, you know. And she tried so hard to talk me into reading Gone with the Wind, and I was just not having any kind of romance. I wasn't interested in that. But one summer, she finally talked me. She worked on me for about a year. And I gave in and I started to read it. And I loved this book. It spoke to my imagination. Now, I was an 11-year-old white girl in the 60s, early 60s in Southern California. I did not know from racial inequity and, you know, our very problematic history. That wasn't what spoke to me about it. It was the gender roles that really blew my mind. The racial things went right over my head, which shamefully, I admit, but they were, of course, to be expected, you know, when you're raised that way. Rhett Butler was this romantic character, but it wasn't just, you know, he was wealthy, self-made, and he was very clever, very devious. He's the guy who was in the Union jail and played cards with the Union officers to get out of jail. I mean, he was quite the interesting character. Clark Gable almost manifested that character. He absolutely was the epitome of what I imagined Rhett Butler would be like. It was very, very odd. And Vivian Leigh, too. Very odd how well they fit the role according to the descriptions in the book. Also, Superman was in it. He was one of the Tarleton twins in the first scene on the porch. I ended up reading Gone with the Wind every summer for about 10 years. And when the movie came out originally, it didn't just exist for anyone to see anytime they wanted. This is the old days. You had to wait for a movie either to be put on television or to be re-released in the theater. It was too lucrative to go on TV. So when I was about 13, the studio re-released it to the theaters. So this was a moment, you know, this was like a Harry Potter moment. We went to see it. It was 5 hours long. This was the longest movie in the history of movies. It was incredible. 5 hours. I mean, I'm just saying that. I don't know for sure. 5 hours long. So Clark Gable, it's impossible to exaggerate how big of a star he was. Iconic is the word used. A walking paradox. He shunned the press. And he preferred working class people. He did not like the Hollywood hot elite set. He was very much, you know, the He-Man image in real life. He was, you know, fishing and hunting and camping and all that nonsense. But he was actually a closeted intellectual. He refused to be photographed with a book because he didn't want to spoil his He-Man image, and that's insane. He used to quote Shakespeare. He was into stage stuff, and he quoted Shakespeare. He was very dapper. Now, this is an interesting little tidbit about Clark Gable. He took several showers a day because he had this kind of, you know, cleanliness thing going on, but he thought baths were unsanitary. And he shaved his chest and his underarms. Just saying. He really liked women. He was one of those men who just liked and respected women, and women really liked him. And I think the implication here is it went beyond, you know, attraction, that he just had a genuine appreciation and respect. He valued marriage. He was married 5 times. But he often got married not for love. And he often got married against the advice of wiser heads. His soulmate was the actress Carole Lombard. And she died tragically 3 years after they were married. And we'll talk about that. He had children. He never saw his kids. He died before his son was born. And he had a daughter. So his son, his wife was pregnant when he died. And so that was very sad. And his son did look a bit like him. And he never knew his daughter. And this is a Hollywood gossip story worthy of its own moment. It's unbelievable. His daughter was the result of an affair while on a movie set on location with Loretta Young. And Loretta Young passed off this daughter as an adopted daughter. And the hoops she went through to carry out the story. Let me just check something here. Okay, I'm not sure. I think we go into more detail about it later on in this chapter. It's been a while since I read this book. But the story of Loretta Young and her daughter with Clark Gable is just fascinating. He kept a real emotional distance from his loved ones. And this is me talking. This is not Sara. You know that strong silent type that's, you know, lauded. It's really hard to live with and really hard to be married to. People who are non-communicative, and, you know, it's kind of obnoxious. And he kept people at an emotional distance. He was born William Clark Gable, February 1st, 1901. It's a long time ago. He was born in an Ohio coal mining town. His mother died within the year of his birth. His father left to seek his fortune in oil. And Clark was raised for 2 years by doting relatives. And then this, to me, this is really a tragedy. His father remarried after these 2 years. So the wife dies. Clark was only a year old, not even. The father leaves, shows back up 2 years later. So he's close to 3, but not quite 3. And had a stepmother in tow, Jeannie Dunlap. And this says she was Clark's saving grace. But I always feel like 2 years old, you know, that age is so crucial in forming bonds, emotional bonds, and separation during that time period is really difficult. So he bonded with his mother and lost her, bonded with these relatives who took care of him, and then lost them at a very important developmental level, psychologically, emotionally. And then you ask yourself, oh, how did this guy get to be emotionally distant and withholding? You wonder why, right? But the stepmother gets a lot of praise. She exposed him to literature and French and singing. Oh, French horn and singing. And he actually said, if it hadn't been for Jenny Dunlap, I'd probably be on a farm in Ohio right now. That's what he said when he was in Hollywood. She doted on him. She had no biological children, and she delighted in being his mother. And she may have been the catalyst for his lifelong attraction to older mothering women. You think? His father thought arts were effeminate, and he pushed him into the oil fields to work. Clark was big and strong, and he was not a fighter, but he did do a lot of manual labor, and it doesn't pay well, at least it didn't then, and he struggled financially. He was known as Billy Gable. And as Billy Gable, for fun, he joined a theater group, and he ended up traveling with him to Portland, Oregon. So that's how he got out of the Midwest. Late in 1923, he met Josephine Dillon, an actress and an acting coach who was 17 years his senior. And they had a thing going on. And ended a serious relationship to study. He just put it aside to study. Josephine was an accomplished stage actress with great reviews, and she kind of went along with this relationship, this sort of mentor to relationship. She poured a lot of time and money into making Gable an actor. She worked on his voice, his posture, his expressions, his teeth. He had dentures by 33. Not that unusual in a time before regular dental hygiene visits. She sent him to the movies every week to familiarize himself. She fell in love with him. And it's said that Clark fell in love with all the possibilities. And he went to Hollywood, and she supported him by giving classes while he was trying to get, on a movie. They were married on December 18th, 1924. She was 41 and he was 23. He flirted with a blonde at a post-wedding party, and so she went to bed alone. Interesting. So he didn't have all that much respect, or maybe at the age of 23, he was very immature. He got silent movie parts, he did stage work, and he traveled, because if you remember from our book on Roscoe Arbuckle, stage work was often vaudeville, but even serious drama stage work was, companies would move from place to place. He often went alone because there was no money for her to go with him. But Sara says he always had company. He actually appeared on Broadway. He made a Broadway debut called Machiavellian. I hope that's how it's pronounced. Josephine planned to go, but he told her they were through. And they were really husband and wife in name only. And later, she published a memoir using pseudonyms. Josephine expressed her thoughts on her husband publicly on occasion. Quote, "What went on in Clark's mind that did not concern acting, I do not know, have never known, and will never know now," she reflected. "What did I think about when we were not talking about his acting or his career? He never knew, and I have never known whether he ever wondered or cared. As for myself, I put in very little time resenting his silences or in suspicions of possible other women. But I was often very lonely. Perhaps he was too." And here's some great pictures. Check this out. Okay, this is a young Clark Gable with a glow up and his coach wife. March 30th, 1929, she filed for divorce. He already was with a woman named Rita Langham. I'm not sure if it's Rhea or Rita. We're going to have to ask Sarah. She was much older, and she'd been married 3 times. She was introduced to him by her daughter. She also was 17 years older than Clark and Billy, but she was rich. She was a sophisticate. She got Spencer Tracy's Broadway. Oh, he got Spencer Tracy's Broadway role in The Last Mile when it performed on the West Coast. There was a great rivalry between him and Spencer Tracy. So he moved Rhea and her 2 children to Hollywood. He hired the agent Minna Wallace, who was the sister of producer Hal Wallace. That name probably ring a bell. He met Irving Thalberg, and he signed a movie contract in December of 1930. In 1931, in 1 year, he made 12 movies. He made the first of 8 total in his life with Joan Crawford. Dance Fools Dance, and Joan Crawford is actually like I remember a scene from it. I don't remember the whole movie, but she's kind of a chorus girl type, you know. She dances and sings. It's pretty funny. Not Yet, Mommy Dearest. He was friendly with Joan, but it did develop into a romance off and on for decades. That's interesting. It was called The Affair That Nearly Burned Hollywood Down by Adela Rogers St. John. St. John became friends with him. Or was it more than that? Rumor has it, might they have had a child? Question mark, question mark. We don't know. Her father was a big journalist guy. And she kind of, I think in the 20s, became well known as a journalist. Joan revered him, which is really hard for me to imagine her revering anybody but the mirror, but okay. Joan Crawford revered him, especially for his manliness. Rhea wanted marriage. She got MGM publicity man Howard Strickling to pressure Gable into marrying her. And he did. The studios had incredible power over the stars who were under contract to the studios. You know how non-disclosure acts today, you know, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and you can't talk or you'll get sued. Well, the contracts that the studios had them sign really made them property of the studios. They told them what to say, what to do, classes to take, movies to be in, what to wear, who to date, where to be seen at night, what openings to go to, and who'd marry. They're just incredible. So they got married in June of 1931. In 1932, he made many movies with big leading ladies, and I didn't copy the whole list because, you know, he only made one movie with Lombard, No Man of Her Own. They weren't a couple yet. That came later. In 1934, he made Men in White with Myrna Loy. Myrna Loy, of Thin Man fame. They made the King and Queen of Hollywood. They were called the King and Queen of Hollywood. And it's important to remember, this was pre-code Hollywood, pre-Hays Hollywood. And so there was more risque stuff. They talked about adultery. They talked about abortion, and it was openly talked about. Very famous scene from a movie with Gloria Swanson, and she's swimming in a pond, bare naked, and very little left to the imagination on film. You know, Hollywood. Then he made Manhattan Melodrama. This was the last movie of that John Dillinger was watching. So John Dillinger watched Clark Gable's movie, left the theater, and was shot by feds as he was leaving the theater. Gable played a roguish woman abuser and was a chick magnet. I don't know, roguish and woman abuser don't play anymore the way they did in the 30s. This is from celebrity profiler Anne Helen Peterson. He, Gable, looked very much as if someone had taken a swarthy pirate, given him a facial, parted his hair to the side, trimmed his mustache, and put him in tails. Because he made the studio mad about something, they farmed him out to Columbia for a little movie called Night Bus, which was supposed to be awful. And so they kind of, we'll teach Clark Gable, and they made him go take this job. That's what studios did. They told you who else to work for. And the movie Night Bus got renamed, and this might ring a bell. It happened one night with Claudette Colbert. She was not real happy that this happened this way. This became Columbia's #1 hit. They got 5 Oscar nominations. Colbert won and Gable won. So they channeled that animosity. He got the first Best Actor for a comedy Oscar. The movie won all 5 things it was nominated for. At the age of 34, he was now a movie star, making $3,000 a week in the middle of the Depression. He made The Call of the Wild with Loretta Young, who was 22, so he was 12 years older. But a blizzard came. It was made on location. Where was it made? Washington State. There was a blizzard, and they got stuck on location in the mountains, in the forest, for months. They couldn't get out. They got snowed in. And 2 + 2, they fell in love. They had an affair. Now, she was very religious. This was a big problem. They returned to Hollywood, and she realized she was pregnant. Her mother told Gable she had been a married woman when she was 17. She'd had a brief marriage. And her mother told Gable, she was a married woman. I thought she knew how to handle herself. Oh, yeah, because she did it all by herself. Holy Ghost came down. Young went to Europe as somebody who was ill and went for recuperation. She spent the last month of her pregnancy with friends in Venice, California. Gable, totally involved as always, went to South America and separated from his wife. Dorothy Manners, a gossip reporter, was fooled into an interview with Loretta. She went to interview her, who was now like 9 months pregnant. And so Loretta claimed to not be doing very well, and she was in bed under all these blankets and duvets, and said she had an internal condition that she'd been suffering since her maturity. So whether they're implying something gynecological or they can't talk about, and an eventual operation would be the only cure. And she couldn't do it right then. So she would have to do this interview from her sick bed. And then in November of 1935, she had a baby girl. She named her Judith Young, father unknown, on the birth certificate. Well, Gable was nominated for a Mutiny on the Bounty in the meantime and lost. And she feared that the truth would end his career and her career. So she put the baby, this is absolutely Machiavellian. I cannot believe this. She got in touch, she was very Catholic, got in touch with a Catholic orphanage, put the baby in the orphanage for 19 months, and then adopted her as a 3-year-old named Jane, and she adopted a 3-year-old named Jane and adopted her biological child, 2-year-old Judy. And then she returned Jane. And so the question in the book, was Jane even real? I don't know. So that's how she got around the rumor mill and the terrible gossip that would have happened if people had known. Then she gave an interview to Luella Parsons about how it was to adopt as a single mother. And after that, the press left her alone because she made this big splash about, I adopted and I'm a single mother. And that was boring. So they left her alone. But here's the funny part. Judy was the spitting image of Clark Gable. I mean, I read her book. She eventually wrote her own autobiography years ago. Judy Davis, I think it was. The pictures are hilarious because it looks like somebody cloned Clark Gable. She did look like she had some similarity to her mother as well, but there's no doubt. She had his teeth and his ears. Gable never gave him any money in support. So Young got married to a guy called Tom Lewis. It wasn't Davis, it was Lewis. Judy Davis is an actress, I think. Judy Lewis was Clark Gable and Loretta Young's daughter. He never adopted Judy. She did take his last name. He had 2 sons, and then he shunned her because I guess he knew her background. So she was raised in a loveless home, and Loretta Young was in total la-la land. She was in complete denial about giving that birth to her. She was her adopted daughter. In theory, and this is just a theory, Loretta had an undiagnosed narcissistic personality disorder. There were a lot of other things in her life that might lead someone to wonder about that. Judy's life was terrible. You read her book, I forget what it was called, but it was very difficult. And it led her to a lifelong interest in psychology. That became her study. In 1937, there was a fraudulent paternity claim from some English guy, but he didn't even have a passport. He couldn't even have been in the United States at the time. And he got convicted of mail fraud. Clark Gable went on to make Saratoga with Jean Harlow. It was 90% made when she collapsed on the set and then subsequently died. This was a terrible tragedy. They used a body double and finished the film. It was MGM's most lucrative film that year, yeah, because people had this sort of ghoulish desire to go see her right before she died. Then he made Test Pilot, which was a monster hit, with Gable, Myrna Loy, and Spencer Tracy. In 1939, he made Idiot's Delight, which was a musical. And there's a very famous scene in it where he does a tap dance in tails and a top hat to putting on the Ritz. It's very good, but it lost money. And he was given the role of Rhett Butler, and this is terrible. Vivien Leigh hated kissing him because he had bad breath. Oh.
She had her issues.
No. This is so interesting because this was really not common at the time. He became pals with Hattie McDaniel, and she played Mammy, the nursemaid to Scarlett, and he threatened to quit because they had segregated facilities for everything for the movie, and when he threatened to quit, they changed that. And his last line in that movie is one of Hollywood's most famous lines. And when he went out that door, my little 13-year-old heart just about broke in half. That was so emotional. He wanted to boycott the premiere in Atlanta because McDaniel wasn't allowed to go because it was segregated. It was in Atlanta, and he wasn't going to have it. But she begged him for her to go. They remained friends for years, and he supported her when she did World War II fundraisers. He made a point of being there to give her that advantage. He lost his third Best Actor nomination for Gone with the Wind, but it was the most financially successful movie ever made, at least to that point. Then Gable began an affair with Lombard. She was a free spirit. She was a practical joker. He said she was more fun than anybody. They got married March 29th, 1939 at their Encino Ranch. San Fernando Valley was a big farmland area. Hard to imagine now if you've seen it. And she was 7 years younger than he. They spent almost all their time on this ranch. She called him Pa and he called her Ma. In 1940, Spencer Tracy wrote a very flattering article for Screen Life magazine. And his career was hot, so this was great. But because Clark Gable was now the king of Hollywood, Lombard got uncomfortable with other women being around. She got suspicious. She was always suspicious of his attention that he gave to other leading ladies. Yes, he said, I've been known to like ladies, and I do, Gable said in his defense. But with her, it's different. Everything about her is different than with any other gal. In 1941, They Met in Bombay with Rosalind Russell. He made Honky Tonk with Lana Turner. He called her an amateur. Lombard was jealous, and she stormed around the set to supervise Lana Turner. Turner hid in her dressing room. She was so afraid of Lombard. Lombard complained to Louis B. Mayer about Turner flirting with Rhett Butler, with Clark Gable. The studio wanted Gable to go around the country selling bonds, and he didn't really want to. Lombard finished the movie To Be or Not to Be, which is a really good movie. And she went on the bond tour for him. She volunteered. She said, stay home. I'll do it. She raised $2 million. This was a big deal in that time. She flew home. They weren't going to fly, and nobody really wanted to fly. And a lot of the people involved in this flight didn't want to get on the plane for some odd reason. Nobody really understands why. It was a premonition. So on January 16th of 1942, the plane crashed. It killed 22 people, including Lombard, her mother, some representatives, I forget who, like business manager or public relations or somebody. There was nothing left but charred bits of a ruby brooch that Clark had given to her. It crashed into the side of a mountain and caught on flames, and it's devastating to look at that crash site. He wore it in a locket every day after her death. He was never the same. Everybody says this. He was never the same after her death. He was devastated. At 40, which was considered old, he wanted to join the war. Can you imagine? Greatest money producer of Hollywood, and he wants to go get killed because he's so upset about the death of his wife, you know. FDR telegrammed him and said, stay where you are. He ignored it, and he joined the Army. He joined the Army Air Force. At the time, the Air Force and the Army were together under the auspices of the Army. There was no separate Air Force. He trained as an officer, and he became a photographer and an aerial gunner. I just cringe when I think of Clark Gable in the rear of a plane in the middle of a fight. Oh my God. He was first assigned to make recruitment films, and he got himself reassigned to fly. And he went on bombing missions, the scarier the better, from England to Germany. And he went on a lot of them. There was a rumor that Hitler put out a bounty on him. He flew with the same crew 24 missions. They were shot up by the Germans, and they had to bail out and parachute in the fog onto an English field. They were shot up again, and one of the crewmen was killed, and 2 others were wounded. Flak went through his boot, and it just missed his head. It came up through the floor of the plane. MGM begged the Air Force to reassign him, and he made and narrated and edited a film that it showed combat flights. You know, it was training. He got the Air Medal, the Distinguished Flying Cross. He left the military a different person, more humble, stoic, and mature. In 1945, he filmed Adventure with Greer Garson, his least favorite leading lady. It doesn't surprise me. In 1949, he made Key to the City with Loretta Young, and he met his daughter Judy, 15, at home one day. They had a pleasant chat. He seemed, interested in her in a kind of a friendly, I'm a guest and I'm just being polite type of way, and never saw her again, which is why it talks about he never knew his daughter. He met her, but he never knew her. When Judy was 31, Loretta finally told her the truth. 31. In 1949, Gable married Lady Sylvia Ashley, and in 52, they were divorced. He said she was too highbrow. She's just a social type, and I'm not. Sylvia had this to say to the court, because, you had to explain yourself. There was no fault divorce. Sylvia said, Mr. Gable did not want to be married to anybody. He told me he didn't wish to be married to me or to anybody else. He got $6,000 community property. Oh, she got $6,000 community property, part of his film earnings for the next 3 years. And she demanded millions in alimony, but it was denied. The guy who didn't want to get married Kathleen K. Williams in June of 55. So 2 years after he said he was never going to get married. She was a model, and she was an interesting person. He took her to the ranch in Encino where Carol Lombard had decorated, and she said, Carol Lombard had good taste. Leave it the way it is. Very smart woman. He made several more movies, and then they weren't very successful. So he made a stab at making his own production company. He made several more films. He didn't believe in TV for him. He didn't want to be on TV. His last movie was The Misfits that he made with Marilyn Monroe. And if you saw the video I made the other day with Larry Jordan, we started to talk about The Misfits, and we're going to continue in our next video that we make. We ran out of time, and interesting story. He performed his own stunts, and it was very hot, desert heat. 11 November 6th of 1960, Judy's 25th birthday, he had a heart attack. And he survived it, but he died 10 days later on his granddaughter's first birthday. He was buried in Forest Lawn next to Lombard. Kay was pregnant with her first child and his second child, John Clark Gable, who was born in 1961, March of 61. Luella Parsons was his godmother. Marilyn Monroe became good friends with Kay, by the way. Kay wrote an autobiography, and it's very gendered, is one way to put it. It's all about the wife's role. In 61, Gable's estate was sued by the widow of the publicist. It was the publicist who was killed in the plane crash, but the case got dismissed. And in 1994, Judy wrote her own autobiography. And when it came out, her mother, Loretta, never spoke to her again. Wow. So Loretta confessed in her posthumously published autobiography that Judy was the daughter of Clark Gable. Loretta died in August of 2000. Judy, who had become a psychologist, died in 2011. And the final word on all of this is Clark Gable may have had an average Joe persona, but the mundane was extraordinary whenever he was involved. Fans worshipped him, fellow actors admired him, yet Gable could never understand what all the fuss was about. You know, he said, this King stuff is pure BS, but he said the whole word. There's no special light that shines inside me and makes me a star. I'm just a lucky slob from Ohio. On my tombstone, they should write, he was lucky and he knew it. And here's a picture of him. Here's a picture of him with his last wife. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to get a picture of his daughter, because I got to tell you, denial is not just a river in Egypt. It's hilarious. She's a spitting image of him. Okay, here we go. This is a good example. Check it out. She had to have her ears pinned back. She did look like her mother too, though, I have to say. Oh, I don't think that this side-by-side picture does her justice as far as like showing the similarities. In which was a child, she looked even more like him. But here's a good picture of her side by side with both her parents, and I think there's no denying it. Nowadays, of course, they just do a DNA test and be done with it. But this is a long time ago. There was no DNA testing at that time. I actually thought we would get through 2 stars this time, and I have way too much information to fit into only an hour. So I'm going to make another video of the next star. And I was hoping to make, a couple of videos, maybe 3, maybe 4 stars. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm getting a big kick out of it. I mean, I did this book a couple of months ago, and I had forgotten everything I read. So it's kind of fun to read about it again. And, you know, stay tuned because there's more to come. And eventually we'll be talking to Sara, and I know there's going to be more. I'm gonna get in touch with her and tell her to dig up some more dirt for our conversation. So thank you very much for watching. Slungafoil, slunch.